two men.
Hey everybody, it's me, Rick Acosta, the Dodger Card Collector, coming to you with another video. Today is Sunday, June 2nd, and I literally just got home from the Palm Springs Card Show in Palm Springs, California. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that show today. Before I get into that and what's coming up this coming week, I wanted to bring up, as someone who grew up in Southern California, on the passing of Bill Walton. Bill grew up in San Diego, California, but for me, he will always be a UCLA Bruin. And growing up in the 70s, the Lakers were obviously my team, and Jerry West was my hero. But UCLA basketball was a pretty big deal back it still is, don't get me wrong, but in the 70s, it was a really big deal. And I started watching UCLA basketball when I was 6 or 7, and I did not realize that they were in the middle of an 88 game winning streak. And previously, before the 88 game winning streak, they had like a 46 game winning streak, and before somebody snapped that 46 game winning streak, there was another streak before that. So they hadn't lost a lot in the previous 10 years, and I kind of took it for granted that UCLA was kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters and was just supposed to win every game. But at the center of that for me, yeah, there were players like Keith Wilkes, who now goes by Jamal Wilkes, and Greg Lee and David Myers and Henry Bibby. UCLA was so good that Swen Nader was Bill Walton's backup. And Swen Nader went on to star in the ABA and eventually in the NBA. But that's how good UCLA was. But like I said, at the center of it all, there was Coach John Wooden, and there was the big redhead, Bill Walton. I'd never seen anything like this guy. He just did everything. He passed the ball, he shot the ball, he rebounded the ball. And growing up, I honestly thought this was just the way it was supposed to be. UCLA was just always supposed to win. And one day in 1974, UCLA traveled out to South Bend, Indiana, to play Notre Dame, and I watched it on TV that Saturday afternoon. And UCLA was up, God, I want to say by several points. And I think Notre Dame went like on some type of 12-0 run. And that last sequence of events, I just remember the ball kept going. UCLA kept shooting the ball up. They kept rebounding. They kept shooting the ball up. They kept rebounding, and eventually time ran out, and Notre Dame won, and the student body charged onto the court. And I remember crying. That was the first time I ever cried for a sporting event. I didn't know that UCLA was allowed to lose. And like I said, I was a big Bill Walton fan, and he went on to the NBA with the Portland Trailblazers and with the Clippers and with the Celtics. And unfortunately, he's one of those guys you always hear everyone say, gosh, if he'd only remained healthy. Just think that the 2 years that I would say he was at his most healthy, I won't say complete because I don't know if he was completely healthy, but the 2 years he was mostly healthy, he led the Portland Trailblazers to a world title, and he won Sixth Man of the Year with the Boston Celtics when they won the World Championship. So I wanted to bring him up just because we've seen a lot of tributes from him this week, and I grew up out here, and I was a big fan, and I'm actually just picked up his book from the library. I've started reading that, and he was a big fan of the Grateful Dead and of Bob Dylan and the Beatles, and a lot of artists I admire, and just wanted to do a quick call out. I do not have any basketball cards or any Sports Illustrated magazines to show off, but I do remember him on the cover of Sports Illustrated a lot. And I've seen some basketball cards floating around, but I'm going to remember Bill Walton with a smile just because he was such a funny guy. But I wanted to call out, Bill, I'm thinking about you and I'm thinking about your family, and I hope everything. I know you're pain free where you are right now. All right, so as I mentioned to you earlier, I was at the Palm Springs Card Show, which is about 110 miles east of where I currently live. And I decided to get up this morning early and drive out there. And some of you might say, why on earth would you drive all the way out there? You're looking at a guy, and I wasn't doing YouTube videos during COVID. I was watching YouTube videos during COVID. But one of the things that I started noticing when the world started like returning to normal was that card shows were coming back. And I hadn't done a card show in a very long time. And I've mentioned to you in the past, we didn't have any good card shows. And I'm talking as early as just 2 or 3 years ago. Things have obviously changed. And I've made it a point to try to hit up as many card shows as I can in the Southern California area. And I'm going to probably venture in the Northern California for a couple of shows this summer, just because I think I have a fear of missing out. The whole FOMO thing. I keep thinking if I don't go to this show, and I had this mentality today with the Palm Springs show because I had never been. If I don't go to this show, someone's going to tell me, oh my God, it was 100 tables. Everybody was selling vintage. Everybody was selling pre-war. There was no Pokemon. I keep thinking that's what's going to happen. And that hasn't happened. But I still go to the show just because I have to see for myself if this show is good enough to continue attending. Or, do you go, if a show is, right now the Pasadena show I think is 3 to 4 times a year. Is the show good enough to go 4 times a year? Sure. Some of you will say yes. Some of you will say I only need to go once or twice a year. The Burbank show is 2 times a year. That's enough for me. That's perfect, actually. The Long Beach show is 3 times a year. I do go all 3 times, but that's because I live in Long Beach. So if I didn't live in Long Beach, I don't know if I would. So I wanted a chance. I've been trying to branch out. There's shows in Temecula. There's shows in Del Mar. There's this show in Palm Springs. Then you've got your little local shows throughout Orange County. In fact, next week, I'm going to just do a quick walkthrough of the Newport Beach show on my way to my mom's house next Saturday. And that's at a high school. I went a few years ago, and I honestly cannot tell if it was pre or post COVID. All I remembered was the gym was full of people. Gym and all the tables were sold out. I do remember 1 or 2 vintage tables, but that was a few years ago. So I want to check it out again just to see what happens. And I have the Long Beach show Thursday, Friday, Saturday, of which I am taking Friday off to go attend and catch up with some friends, catch up with some of the sellers, and hopefully pick up some cards. So, but as I was saying, I try to hit as many shows as I can just because I want to see what these shows are like. And I think by the end of the summer with these shows I'm currently attending, and there's a Sacramento show in July that I'm hoping to attend, and there's the Burbank show in August, and then the Long Beach and the Pasadena shows come back in September. I think I want to get all these card shows out of my system. That way I know I don't have to go every time. And, yes, going to a card show is fun. Yes, going to a card show is excellent. To buy a card. I kind of want to take today. I saw a card that I could have had. It was a nice card. Don't get me wrong. I won't name it in case the seller's watching. It was a nice card, but I could have gotten that on eBay for $20 or $30 cheaper. So I told them I'd look around some more. But I want to get all these card shows out of my system. So maybe in 2025, I'm not as reliant to wait for a card show to finish a set. Maybe I'll treat card shows more as just me going to look at cards and hang out and talking to people. And, if I'm lucky, I buy a card or 2. But I don't have to make the goal of you have to buy 100 cards or you have to buy 20 cards when you go to a show. So that's the reason today I went to Palm Springs, because I didn't go last year. And let's go this year. So I drove out there, 2-hour drive. Palm Springs, California, for those of you that don't know, is in the desert of California, Southern California. And so I get there free. So the good stuff, free parking, admission is only $10. Yesterday, it was a show that was on Saturday and Sunday. I went on Sunday. Today they had Dwight Gooden signing autographs. Yesterday they had Brett Saberhagen and Jose Canseco. So I remember thinking, wow, they've got some ball players there signing autographs. This might be a really good show to attend. And it was an okay show. I would say if you're into Pokemon, there was a lot of Pokemon, you guys. It's funny. I've noticed some of the comments on some of my previous shows. I believe it was Mark who made the comment of there was a lot of Pokemon at the Pasadena show, and I won't put words into his mouth, but I think he wanted the Pokemon guys to go away. Mark, if that's what you're implying, I'm implying it too. There is a side that says I wish the Pokemon guys would go away, but then it makes me wonder if you got rid of if you had a card show and you said no Pokemon, and I'm only talking about California, you guys, just because it's a little different out here. If we said no Pokemon, would we have shows with only 10 or 20 sellers? Just because there is so much Pokemon, it's ridiculous. So there was a lot of Pokemon. There was some modern. There were thankfully three, potentially four vintage tables. Two of the sellers I had seen before in Pasadena, one in Long Beach, and another group of guys from Arizona, from Gilbert, Arizona. And they had some. I took some photographs. They had a lot of late 50s and a ton of 60s commons and stars. I bought a couple of 1968s from them for $5 each. So in that regards, it made the show successful because those were the only two cards I bought. Were two cards from 1968, and now I'm down to like 8 to 10 more cards. Was hoping to find a 63 Clemente. There wasn't in luck. But the show is, if you're from that area, if you live in Palm Springs or if you live in the Inland Empire, you feel like taking a drive to Palm Springs, maybe making a day of it, have lunch out there, or just walk around. It's a pretty good show. I don't see myself driving 100 miles again to go to the show, but I had nothing going on today, and I wanted to get out of the house. I wanted to look at some cards, so I go, let's take a chance. And I kind of like seeing what shows are out there because you never know, you might stumble onto something that's potentially a good show to go to, and that's the reason I go to these shows. And I like telling you guys about it. So, like I said, it was an all right show. There were plenty of bathrooms. There was plenty of walking space. 100 tables. Not all the tables were sold. By the end of the, I should say it took me. I stayed an hour and a half, and that meant I worked the entire floor 3 times in that hour and a half, and I wanted to see Dwight Gooden. Not that I was getting anything signed, but I just wanted to see him. And he had a decent line of people. I would say 30, 40, 50 people were waiting in line when he started, and people were getting their photos taken with him, and he was talking to people, shaking everybody's hand. He seemed like a really good guy, so that was really nice to see. If you're, with the exception of those guys from Arizona, if you were trying to finish a vintage set, good luck. That probably wasn't going to happen at this show. If you're looking for graded cards, like there were a couple of really nice graded cards, graded tables. Other than that, there was a lot of modern. Like I said, there was a lot of Pokemon. But the AC worked beautifully. The Wi-Fi wasn't the best. If you want a hot dog and potato chips and a Coke for $15, do that. I didn't do that. I went into town for lunch, and that's what made it nice. Got to walk around Palm Springs, which is beautiful. I haven't been there in ages. But it's an okay show. And like I said, if you happen to live in that area, go for it. If you don't live in that area, try to make a day of it, you guys. Don't just plan on that show. But looking forward to this weekend in Long Beach and Newport Beach, and let's see what happens. So what do we got going today? I don't have any pickups to show you because I have been buying very little. I am going to show you some cards that I picked from my card case. I'm not as random this time just because I wanted to avoid certain sets. Or you don't need to see cards from 1941, or you don't need to see cards from 1963 or 1957. So I picked out 12 cards from my various display cases, and I'm going to share them with you right now, and we'll talk a little. All right, thanks. So we're going to show 12 cards, and let's see what stories I got for you here, if any. So I'm going to start with a 1990 Leaf Frank Thomas in a PSA 8.5. I bought this card just because at the time, I have display cases on my walls in the hallway, and I have two display cases that are reserved for what I would say are the 60, I won't say the greatest, but 60 of the greatest players. And at one point, I had Frank Thomas up there. And I put him up, and I want a Frank Thomas card on there. And the only reason I took him down was because I started buying older cards, and the value of this one went down. And yeah, I'm kind of one of those guys that want, if it's going to be on, if I have a card on a display case, I kind of want it to be a little higher valued. So I don't put up display cases for $10 cards, and hopefully that doesn't sound snooty. But there's Frank Thomas. Next card I bought for the same reason. And this is a 1933 Gaudy Eddie Collins. And Eddie Collins was one of the great second basemen, I'd still say, of all time. In the early, pre-war, I think Eddie Collins and Rogers Hornsby would be neck and neck for greatest second baseman. And when I bought this card, I also bought it for my display wall because I wanted someone like Eddie Collins on my wall. Little did I realize that when I bought this card, I did not realize that the Gaudy set also featured players that had retired. And I didn't realize that Eddie Collins had retired. So I still love this card. It's a great card, but I eventually replaced Eddie Collins on the display case with a T205 Eddie Collins, because that one is from his playing days. And I am one of those people. I really do like cards from people's playing days. So it's easy for me to say, yeah, I have a 1973 Babe Ruth, because I think he has two like all-time great cards or something like that. Same thing with 1976, there's a Babe Ruth, there's a Lou Gehrig. It's not the same thing as having a 33 or 34 Gaudy. So I do like my Players' Day cards. But this is a nice Eddie Collins. Let's see. Okay, now here's a case. When you're buying Dodger cards and you call yourself a Dodger card collector, this card is Bart Shirley. And obviously Grant Jackson is to the right, who had a very good career with the Phillies and the Orioles and the Yankees, and I think he was on the Pirates. He had a very long career. Bart Shirley, I think, played less than 20 games for the Dodgers, if that. And this card, I'm not going to lie to you, was very expensive. From what I have always heard, because I've never built this set, the 1966 set is a demon to build, just because the high numbers are very scarce. So this card, I bought this card pre-COVID, you guys. This is a 7 off center. It cost me $110. And I couldn't find it cheaper ungraded. That's the reason I bought it graded. And I haven't looked up VCP lately, but the last time I did look, I want to say the card had doubled. I don't know. I could be wrong there, but here's the case of sometimes when you're working on a team set. This card, the 1962. Oh, it's a Dodger rookie card. But Bob Uecker's on it. So that one costs a lot of money. And I can't even tell you off the top of my head right now who the Dodger is. And then naturally, the 1963 Ken McMullen has Pete Rose on it. So sometimes when you're buying team cards, you got to spend some money for cards that you weren't planning. And this one definitely was. I wouldn't get rid of this, though, for anything. Just because this is a hard card to get. And it's just not going anywhere. But that's Bart Shirley from 1966. All right, a 1960 Topps Harmon Killebrew and a PSA 3. I was at a card show with my buddy Eric. I don't think we'd seen each other 35, 40 years. And we decided to meet up at this card show outdoors at Burbank High School. Maybe 2-3 years ago. It wasn't much of a show, but there was this table. I always get a chuckle out of it. This table, these two young boys, I'm assuming they're brothers. I think they were selling their dad's baseball card collection, but he was there watching. And they had all these graded cards just sitting there, and we just, and I'll be honest, I was not really looking to buy these cards. And we just go, how much? And he goes 15 each or 2 for 20. And I go 2 for 20. So I just looked. I found this 63 Harmon Killebrew, this 62 Eddie Matthews, and he gave them to me for $20. And I want to say if we had bought 3, it would have been like 3 for 25. But I just left it as these 2 cards, and I love this card. I think it's a great card. I paid all of $10 for it. So here is my 1960 Topps Harmon Killebrew. A 1952 Bob Feller. I bought this for my display wall as well once. And since then, I added a 1950 Bowman. The 1950 Bowman Feller and the 1938 Gowdy Feller are like 2 of my favorite cards ever, period. And I don't own the 38 Gowdy, but I did buy the 50, and because I bought the 50 Bowman Feller went up on the display case. This one came down. It's still a great card. Love the yellow background, love the smile. I think I paid $50 for this card. Some price that's astronomically low by today's standards. But that's Bob Feller. Next up, I remember this card. 1955 Bowman Pee Wee Reese. This was a day that hours on a Sunday afternoon, much like today, I had placed a bid on a 1955 Bowman Reese ungraded, and for some reason, this card came up, and I bid on it. Even though I already had a bid for an ungraded card, I bid on it, and I say, nah, no one's gonna let me win this card for that price. Well, I ended up winning this card. And about an hour later, I ended up winning the ungraded 55 Bowman. So on that day, I remember kicking myself. I go, I bought 2 of the same card. In hindsight, both cards, I think they cost me less than $30 total. So they're both prominently featured in my collection, but this is a 55 Bowman Pee Wee Reese. All right, next card. I saw this ages ago. I would say maybe 30 years ago. And I thought, oh, what an interesting card. And I never thought anything about it. And once I started building Dodger team sets, I go, well, I really want this card. And it took me a little while to find it. Because I thought, so this is the 1989 Upper Deck Kirk Gibson. What I didn't know was this isn't his regular base card. This is a World Series card. So naturally, this was when he hit the home run in Game 1 of the 1988 World Series. He's approaching first base. And I fell in love with this card the second I saw it. Didn't do anything about it. I probably waited 30 years to do something about it. But I love this card. And to me, as a Dodger fan, this is like the ultimate Kirk Gibson card. There'll be a Tiger fan out there who's going to want to show me his rookie card. But for me, it's this card. And the funny thing is, if you look at the card number up here, the card number is card number 666. I had heard a rumor on the Dan Patrick radio show that a guy at Upper Deck was a big Giants fan. And that's why this card number was 666. In reality, the guy that worked at Upper Deck was an Angels fan, I have learned. There's an article about it. And for like 3 to 5 years, for the Upper Deck releases, the early Upper Deck releases, look at card number 666. It's always a Dodger player from like 89 to like 93, something like that. They all feature Dodger players. So the number 666, I guess, is reserved for the Dodgers, but Kirk Gibson will always be a legend for me. So that's a great card. This card I bought just because I love it. I mean, I just love the pose. I love the smile. I love the Cubs uniforms. I love that Ernie Banks is just holding the bat. And I saw it. I don't know if this happens to you guys. Sometimes you just look at a card, you've never seen it before. It's happened to me this year with a 1933 Gowdy Charlie Root. I still have not bought it, but I've seen it and I go, I want that card. And that's what happened with this Ernie Banks card. 1967 Topps. It's in a PSA 6. Ernie has some good cards. Some of you will say Ernie has some bad cards, and I'll probably disagree with you, but this is a good-looking card from 1967. Just because uh, I like 70s cards, and I don't think I talk enough about it. And I've been getting some comments about the 70s that I'm honestly thinking about future shows. But here's a 1976 top Steve Garvey. And I do think he should be in the Hall of Fame. And there are people I certainly know right now yelling back at the television or the computer as I say that. But here's a 1976 top Steve Garvey. I picked this next card just because of the gentleman I met at the card show today. And that is this 1955 Topps Al Kaline. I was at this table today looking through boxes of vintage commons. There were stars in there, though. There was Yastrzemski, there was Lou Brock, there was Bob Gibson, there was Don Drysdale. It was kind of overwhelming, though. There was a lot in there. And the guy next to me comes up and goes, "Did you see any Al Kaline in there?" And I go, "Honestly, I don't think so." And I go, "What are you looking for?" And he was like, he was saying, "I need the 50s and the early 60s." And I go, "Oh, I didn't see that." But in his honor, I'm going to share the 1955 Al Kaline in a 4.5. Here's another card that I bought from my display case. Not thinking I'd ever buy the 1954 rookie. And I did end up buying the rookie card. And this card went off the display wall and is now in a display case in my card room. But this is a great card from 1955. That's Al Kaline. And I hope the gentleman that I met at the card show was able to find something of Al Kaline's today. Don't know if he did. Here's another card that I bought just because Frank Robinson is the most underrated guy in the hobby. His values just don't seem to go up the way guys like Mays or Aaron or Mantle do. And I bought this card so cheap a couple of years ago. And you could still find Frank Robinson for relatively cheap. And here is my 1960 Topps Frank Robinson. And the last card is a 1953 Topps Warren Spahn on the Boston Braves. The first set in 1953 features any of the Braves players with their Boston Braves hat. But if you buy cards in the later series for 1953, the Braves had already moved to Milwaukee. They feature an M on there. So I like this card because this is my only Warren Spahn card on the Boston Braves. Until the day I buy a 1950 Bowman, this will be my oldest Warren Spahn card. Absolutely think it's a great card. Just love it. So, but those are some random cards I decided to show you guys today. And if you happen to stick around this long, you guys, thanks so much for watching. And we'll catch you next time, all right? Take care.
So is this him? You taking these back to Australia? Braves have not been doing what the Braves do, right? Yeah.
It's a beautiful day for a ball game today. If you and I are out of dollars and cents,
Oh, honey, we can always share a little hole in the fence.
it's a beautiful day for the ladies. So throw all your dishes away. We're gonna cheer